The billionaire's mansion stood like a silent fortress on the edge of Lagos, its high walls guarding secrets that even its owner, Chief Olumide Adebayo, could no longer ignore. For years, he had believed that wealth was the glue that held his family together, that the expensive cars, the sprawling estate, and the countless privileges he provided were enough to secure their loyalty. But as he approached his 70th birthday, his heart grew restless, not because of age or illness but because of an unshakable doubt. Did they love him, or did they simply love what he could give? His wife, Funk, once the fiery young woman who had danced barefoot with him in the rain when he was still a struggling trader, now barely looked at him without demanding something in return. Another vacation, another diamond, another promise of expansion for her boutique business. His eldest son, Kunal, the supposed heir to his empire, strutted around the house like a peacock, more interested in throwing lavish parties than learning the ropes of the company that bore their name. His daughter, Tenny, adored by the press for her beauty and elegance, seemed incapable of holding a conversation with him that didn't revolve around her next fashion show or the latest influencer contract. Even his youngest, Depo, who had once clung to his knees crying whenever he left for business trips, now treated him as if he were an ATM. Press the right emotional button, get a new car or a trip abroad. It was this gnawing suspicion that pushed Olumide to hatch a plan so bold and so uncharacteristic of his usual calculated self. He would pretend to be gravely ill. Not just a cough or a headache, but something dire, something that would force them to confront who they really were without the illusion of control his money created. He began by informing his family doctor, a trusted friend named Dr. Hassan, who agreed to play along. Together they crafted a believable story. A mysterious illness that required rest, care, and possibly a transfer of responsibility for the family business. That morning, as Olumide sat in his massive study, the air smelled faintly of old leather and cedarwood, the scent of power of years of careful building, yet it all felt hollow. He dialed Funk first. "I need you," he said in a voice so weak it startled even him. There was a pause before she replied. "What happened? Did something happen to the bank accounts?" Her words sliced through him sharper than any scalpel could. He explained the diagnosis, vague enough to sound terrifying, specific enough to be believable. She gasped dramatically, but before hanging up she asked, "So, what happens to the businesses if, you know?" Next came Kunal. His reaction was infuriatingly casual. "Ah, Daddy, sorry-o. That's tough. Don't stress yourself. Just sign whatever documents we need to keep things running, okay? I'll handle everything." Tenny cried when she heard the news, but between sobs she asked whether the fashion show in Paris would still be funded. Depo didn't even pick up the phone. He texted back a single line hours later. "Sorry, Dad. Busy right now. We'll check on you later." That evening, Olumide instructed the staff to spread the word. The chief was unwell, bedridden, unable to attend to anything except his health. He waited, expecting that by nightfall, his family would rush in with concern, maybe even regret. But the house was eerily quiet, the only sounds the soft hum of the air conditioning and the faint chatter of the maids downstairs. Days passed, and their behavior only worsened. Funk invited her friends over for a small gathering, turning the mansion into a noisy carnival, claiming it was to keep her spirits up. Kunal began making calls to business associates behind his father's back, positioning himself as the new head of the empire. Tenny posted a photo on Instagram captioned, "Praying for Daddy's quick recovery," while lounging by a pool in Dubai. And Depo, sweet little Depo, emptied one of his father's credit cards to buy a sports car he proudly flaunted on social media. Each betrayal cut deeper than the last, but what truly shattered Olumide wasn't their greed. It was their indifference. Nobody came to sit with him. Nobody asked what he needed, how he felt, or if he was afraid. It was as though, in their minds, he had already ceased to exist except as a bank balance waiting to be transferred. On the fourth day of his charade, when loneliness began to claw at his sanity, a soft knock sounded at his door. He expected it to be one of the staff, perhaps bringing his meal. But when the door creaked open, it was Amina, the housemaid whose family he had sponsored through school, a girl so quiet and humble she was often invisible to the family. She carried a bowl of pepper soup, its aroma rich and comforting. "Chief," she said gently, her voice laced with genuine concern, "you need to eat something. You'll get weaker like this." He blinked at her, unsure how to respond. She set the tray down and adjusted his pillows with a care none of his own blood had shown. "I heard what they're saying downstairs," she continued, almost whispering. "They think you're dying. But, even if you were, shouldn't they be here with you?" Her question struck him like thunder, because it was the question he had been too proud to ask himself. As she fed him spoon by spoon, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Seen, human, vulnerable yet safe. That night, lying awake, he realized the experiment had revealed more than just his family's selfishness. It had revealed his own failure. He had built an empire, yes, but he had not built a family. He had given them everything except the one thing they truly needed: himself. And now, as he watched the flicker of the city lights beyond his window, he began to think. Part 2 of his plan would not be about revenge, but about redemption. Yet, deep inside, a storm brewed because he knew. Not everyone deserved saving, and when the truth came out, not everyone would survive what was coming next. The morning of revelation arrived like a quiet storm, subtle in its approach yet promising chaos once it broke. Chief Olyamide Adebayo, now fully committed to his ruse, had spent the night rehearsing what he would say when the truth finally came out. He wasn't seeking melodrama. He wanted clarity, a moment so searing that it would etch itself into the memory of every person who had betrayed him. But first he needed to see just how far they would go. Over the past week, he had watched his empire teeter on the edge of ruin, not because of market fluctuations or hostile takeovers, but because of the sheer recklessness of his own blood. Connell had begun hosting business meetings at the company headquarters that looked more like parties, complete with expensive champagne, rented models, and music loud enough to shake the glass walls of the boardroom. Funk had called a jeweler to the house, selecting necklaces and rings to keep her spirits up, all charged to his personal account. Tenny, still abroad, was using his name to secure sponsorships, promising exclusive access to the family fortune once she became the face of a luxury brand. And Depot, sweet Lost Depot, had taken the new sports car on a reckless drive through Victoria Island, crashing it into a street pole, then bribing the police to make the report disappear. Yet, amid all this madness, Amina remained his only anchor. Every morning, she brought him breakfast and spoke to him as though he were still the man he had once been, not just a figurehead collapsing under the weight of betrayal. She never asked for anything in return, though he noticed the calluses on her hands, the faint tiredness in her eyes from working long hours to support her younger siblings. One evening, as she adjusted the curtains in his room, she asked, "Chief, why do you let them treat you this way? You are not as weak as they think." Her words struck him deeply, for they mirrored the thought that had been simmering in his mind. Weakness was a choice, and he was done choosing it. So he called Dr. Hassan and told him, "It's time. Bring them all here tomorrow. Tell them it's urgent." When the family gathered in the grand living room, it was a scene worthy of theater. Funk arrived first, draped in a new silk wrapper, her face expertly made up, as though she were attending a gala rather than an emergency family meeting. Connell swaggered in with two of his so-called advisors, men who looked more like nightclub bouncers than business strategists. Tenny joined via video call from Paris, her camera angled perfectly to showcase her glamorous hotel suite. Depot stumbled in last, smelling faintly of alcohol, his eyes bloodshot but defiant. They all looked irritated, as though this gathering were an inconvenience, a distraction from their self-indulgent pursuits. Dr. Hassan stood at the center of the room, his expression grave. "Your father's condition," he began, "has taken a turn for the worse. We need to discuss what happens next." Instantly, their masks of concern slipped on. Funk gasped dramatically, clutching her chest. "Oh, my poor husband," she said, though her eyes glinted with calculation. Connell cleared his throat. "Doctor, you can speak freely. We need to ensure there's no disruption to the company. I've already taken steps to stabilize things." Tenny's voice came through the speaker, smooth as silk. Daddy, I'm praying for you. I wish I could be there, but Paris is, essential for my brand right now. Depo said nothing, simply slouched into a chair and scrolled through his phone. That was when Olyamide entered. Slowly, deliberately, he walked into the room. Not the feeble, broken man they expected, but tall, steady, and dressed in his finest agbada, the deep blue fabric shimmering under the chandelier light. Gasps filled the room. You're walking," Funk stammered. "You're not sick." Kunnel's face twisted into confusion, then anger. "What is this?" Olyamide let the silence stretch, savoring the discomfort that prickled the air like static. Then he spoke, his voice calm but carrying the weight of thunder. "I pretended to be sick," he said, "because I needed to see you without the mask that my money forces you to wear. And what I saw," he paused, his gaze sweeping across them like a blade, "was uglier than any disease I could have imagined." He turned to Kunnel first. "You, my eldest, who should have been my right hand, turned my boardroom into a nightclub. Do you think leadership is about champagne and hashtags? You're a boy playing with matches in a house you didn't build." Kunnel opened his mouth to protest, but Olyamide raised a hand. "Not a word. You've spoken enough through your actions." Then he looked at Funk. "You, my wife, who once danced with me in the rain when we had nothing. Where did that woman go? The one who believed in me before the jets and the diamonds. Now all I see is someone who measures love by the weight of gold around her neck." Tears welled in her eyes, but he didn't flinch. "Save your performance for someone else." His gaze shifted to Tenny, whose perfect smile faltered on the screen. "You parade my name around the world like a brand logo, but when I needed a daughter you gave me a press release. Fame will not hug you when you're old, my dear. Remember that." Finally he turned to Depo. "And you, my baby, the one I thought would keep my heart soft. I gave you freedom hoping you'd find purpose, but you've mistaken recklessness for living. You almost killed yourself chasing thrills you didn't earn." The room was silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. Then Olyamide did something none of them expected. He smiled. But it was not a smile of forgiveness. It was a smile of resolve. "Here is what will happen," he said. "From this moment, the accounts are frozen. The businesses are under new management, mine. You will earn what you receive, or you will receive nothing." He motioned toward the doorway, and Amina stepped in, her head bowed modestly. "This young woman," Olyamide continued, "showed me more love in 1 week than you all have shown me in years. From today, she will oversee the foundation I am creating, a foundation you will all work for if you want a share of anything I leave behind." The outcry was immediate. Funk shrieked, "You can't be serious." Kunnel shouted, "You're destroying this family." Tenny's voice rose from the screen, sharp and indignant. "Daddy, this is a PR disaster." Depo muttered something under his breath and stormed out. But Olyamide remained unshaken. "I am not destroying this family," he said quietly. "I am saving it. The ones who care will stay. The ones who don't will leave. And I am finally at peace with whichever it is." As the meeting dissolved into chaos, Olyamide stepped outside onto the balcony. The city stretched before him, vibrant and alive, indifferent to his personal dramas yet somehow reflecting the second chance he felt blooming in his chest. Beside him, Amina stood awkwardly, unsure if she belonged in this moment. He turned to her and said, "You reminded me that I'm still a man worth being loved, not just feared or used. Whatever happens next, you'll never be invisible in this house again." For the first time in years he felt the weight on his shoulders lift, not because his family had changed but because he had. And as the wind swept through the balcony, carrying with it the sounds of Lagos, the horns, the laughter, the chaos, he whispered to himself, "This was never about testing them. It was about finding me."